Today, we're going to work on something that I had a hard time finding tutorials for when I first started out. Let's do some tattoos! The first thing that I want to highlight today is the use of practicing. I had this Iron Jaws model from spare parts that I had used to practice other techniques before, and I grabbed him to make sure that I was primed and ready, skills-wise, to apply a tattoo to a miniature. I also used him to see what kind of size of tattoo I would want to apply, as they are fairly similar in build to the Beastclaw Raiders. I took 3 parts Lamian Medium, 1 part Caliban Green, 1 part Incubi Darkness, and 1 part Abaddon Black, and mixed them all together on my wet palette to give the effect of an aged black tattoo with a hint of green in it, as is typically seen in a lot of older tattoos today. In this video, you're going to see a lot more footage of each individual part and step of this process, and that's because my frustration when I was first trying to find how to do tattoos on miniatures years ago was that I often wasn't able to find any footage or pictures of somebody applying the tattoo with their brush. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to use the brush to do what it's supposed to do, and that's by treating the brush the way that you're supposed to treat them, in that I'm mostly following the rules of good brushwork, in that I am flowing away from my starting point and I am making very thin lines, and this is where it's important to have a well-loaded brush as well. You can see in this clip I go back and grab paint from the palette several times, and that's because any sort of improper amount of paint on the brush could ruin this whole process entirely. Of course, to say that it could ruin the process entirely might be a bit dramatic, as there may be a few happy little accidents that you'll be able to see in this video as I go along, in that while I'm trying to do my best to use proper brush strokes and provide thin lines, every once in a while the brush gets away from me and I have to fix it, which is totally fine. And as long as you're using thin enough lines and controlled enough brush strokes, fixing it is just a matter of putting another thin line to even out the design right next to wherever your mistake was. Now, I don't have an express design that I'm going off of to make this. However, I did know that I wanted to create a Viking or Nordic style sea serpent traveling along this miniature's body. And so, having looked at plenty of source material for that, I'm making some winding body parts of the sea serpent up his arm here. And as you can see, I'm trying to make sure that it gives the visual effect of wrapping around, and at this moment here, I'm restarting the design from the back of his arm to show that the serpent is coiling his large biceps here. If at any point it doesn't look exactly how you want it to, don't get discouraged. Later on in this video, there's going to be a portion where I show that I get discouraged a little bit, and I have a portion that isn't my favorite, and so I go back and fix it. Another thing that I want to point out here, though, that I'm thinking about as I'm applying this tattoo, is the contours of the musculature on this miniature's arms. If you look closely there, I'm making sure that I am changing the pattern's direction just a little bit in a natural way to show that this was applied, the tattoo itself was applied, well, the miniature may not be flexing per se, and that the tattoo would warp a little bit around these areas of curvature on the miniature, And for some inspiration on this, or to see how those lines might change a little bit, you can certainly look at images of tattoos on arms on the old Google machine. I do apologize if at times in this video it is a little bit shaky or difficult to follow. That's because we were dealing with some tripod issues while trying to film this, as well as the difficult nature of filming this intricate detail of the model in between all of its different jutting parts that wanted to capture the attention of the camera much more than the tattoo seemed to. Something that, if you're trying to copy this effect, is important to note is that when I got to the other arm, I almost immediately started with the end point of this sea serpent because I wanted to make sure that I had enough space to create it properly, as well as making sure that it wouldn't interfere with the coiling designs that I would add around it on this arm. Now, I really did enjoy the head that I created here, but as you can see at this point in the video, there's just a little burr on the end of my brush here, and that is going to end up costing me a little bit as it will interact with the teeth in such a way that I accidentally close this serpent's mouth in an unpleasing way right there, and I have to go back and redo it, which is totally okay because we can do that. We know how to do that, and as miniatures painters, we know that perfection might be the goal, but it's not always the destination. So, like many issues in life, or when you make a mistake, sometimes it's better to just walk away and then come back and fix it with a clear head. And that's exactly what I did here. I went to work on the rest of the model's arm and fix up a few other details before going back to fixing the head, because doing that step had served its purpose. I had already blocked out where the head would be, and I could continue on the other parts of the tattoo. Now, before I went in and finished up that head, I decided that I wanted to add spines to the body of the sea serpent, which is what you can see I'm doing here in a very tedious but well worth it fashion. And I wanted to make sure that there was a sense of direction and flow with this tattoo as well, so those spines are only going on one side. Now I mixed 2 parts Lamian medium, 1 part Kislev flesh, and 1 part Cadian flesh tone to match the general contrast and brightness and opacity of the skin tone that was already on the top of this miniature's shoulder, and I used that, allowing it to dry several times to cover up that mouth, and then I went back in and applied a very similar technique to what I was doing to create the spines to add teeth back in with this corrected head.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video today. If you aren't already a subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Hit like on this video if you liked it, and leave me a comment regarding what you'd like to see in a future tutorial or what you'd like to see painted next, because we are moving on from Beastclaw Raiders today. If you are one of my recent subscribers that have shown up for the militia in the last couple of videos, welcome to the Miniature Militia of Minnesota. I'm so glad to have you. If you'd like to further support me, check out my links in the description regarding my Patreon as well as my Instagram. Again, have a wonderful day and thank all of you. I'm so glad that you're here.